Death and devastation. That's what Russia's glide bombs have wrought on Ukraine's cities and vital infrastructure. The country has found a way to convert its massive dumb bombs into gliding terrors, launchable from behind the front lines directly at Ukraine. Vladimir Putin thought Ukraine didn't have an answer. He was wrong. Ukraine has just come up with its own version of a glide bomb that's like an unstoppable ghost for Russia. These Sky Snipers are striking Putin's forces hard as Ukraine fights fire with fire. On June 25, United 24 media reported that Ukrainian engineers had been hard at work on a domestically produced version of Russia's glide bombs. By the end of June, they'd succeeded. Ukraine had a glide bomb system it could use to convert its standard aerial bombs into long-range guided munitions. For context, a standard bomb is also often called a dumb bomb. Though such bombs pack a massive punch, they're dumb because they have no form of internal guidance system. Using them carries a lot of risk. Ukraine would have to fly bombers over Russian positions to deploy these bombs, placing those bombers at risk of being struck down by Russia's air defenses. Russia faces the same problem in Ukraine. That's why it started using glide bombs in the first place. Rather than risk its aircraft, it launches the bombs from air bases behind the front lines so they can glide to their targets without Ukraine's air defenses engaging the plane that drops them. But more on that later in the video. Back to Ukraine's new glide bomb. Defense Express offers an exclusive report on what the country's engineers have cooked up. In its own June 25 article, it says that the bomb is an analogue of the Russian CAB systems Putin is having his manufacturers build en masse, and that it's designed by a Ukrainian company called Medoid. The new glide bomb isn't ready yet. It's currently undergoing testing to ensure Ukraine can deploy it consistently. However, there's already plenty to know about it thanks to Oleg Vostrik, who's a representative of Medoid. The guidance and glide module for the 500kg bomb is entirely our own design. The wings are easy to attach, taking just a few minutes, and there are no issues with integration. Ukrainian companies are responsible for most of the production, Vostrik revealed to Defense Express. The navigation module is domestic, although we are currently considering testing a new system developed by a leading French company. It's designed to ensure maximum resilience and protection against electronic warfare. Still, there are some components we are forced to import. These are interesting points. Ukraine hasn't attempted to reinvent the wheel with its version of the glide bomb. It doesn't need to. As crude as the Russian design may seem to some, especially when it comes to its lack of precision, there's no denying that it works. Medoid's goal was to create something similar that Ukraine could use to battle back against Russia's aerial threat, and with a little help from some outside sources, it appears to have done just that. Defense Express also revealed some details about the glide bomb's capabilities. It says that its range currently stands at about 37.2 miles, though that may be extended in the future. Medoid is already working on a version that will allow Ukraine to strike targets up to 49.7 miles away, and even the current version can travel further than 37.2 miles in the right conditions. A drop height of 6.2 miles would allow the bomb to glide for about 62 miles before it's forced to touch down on a target. It's also known, thanks to Vostrik, that Medoid's glide bomb kit is compatible with bombs weighing 500 kilograms, which is about 1,102 pounds. In other words, each of these kits makes a bomb weighing around 1 ton usable for Ukraine. Where those bombs may have previously been sitting in storage units because Ukraine couldn't risk the bombers needed to drop them, they can now unleash their explosive fury on targets behind the Ukraine war's front lines. United 24 adds more details, noting that Medoid was able to get funding for its glide bomb development via a campaign it organised via the Foundation for Advanced Technologies. That funding allowed it to refine its glide bomb design to the point where a single kit now costs just $25,000 to build. That's huge. For a fraction of the cost of a precision missile, Ukraine can convert its unused dumb bombs into viable weapons that will cause serious damage to Russia's defenses. Knowing what bombers Ukraine is going to use is also thanks to the German media outlet Welt. In a YouTube video, its correspondent said, The aircraft that the Ukrainians use for this purpose is originally developed in the Soviet Union. A Sukhoi Su-24 bomber is a ground attack bomber and frontline bomber. These machines have been used relatively effectively by Ukraine since the beginning of the war. He's not wrong. During the initial stages of Putin's invasion, Ukraine employed its Su-24s to fight back against Russia's aerial assault. By February 2024, Ukraine had lost 18 of these aircraft to Russia's air defenses, which is practically all of the stockpile of between 10 and 20 it was believed to have before Putin invaded. Hold on a second, those numbers don't add up. If Ukraine has lost almost its entire stockpile of Su-24s, how's it going to use them to launch its new glide bombs? The answer comes from the Forbes article that revealed the loss of 18 aircraft, which also says that Ukraine has been working hard to restore as many of these aircraft. Former Forbes military correspondent David Axe said that Ukraine had more Su-24s waiting in the wings. He reveals that a trio of writers for Aviation Photography Digest, Patrick Rokis, Paul Gross and Hans Leumans, revealed back in 2015 that Ukraine had far more Su-24s than anybody anticipated. But Rokis, Gross and Leumans in the reporting also counted another 9 or 17 nearly airworthy Su-24s at Starokostiantynivka, plus around 30 additional bombers stored in relatively good condition. They didn't count scores of derelict Su-24 airframes in open storage at bases across Ukraine, in particular the aircraft boneyard in Bila Serka near Kyiv. Axe writes, that means Ukraine always had more than the 20 or so Su-24s everybody thought. It has up to 63, most of which could be restored to viable condition with a little extra work. It seems that Ukraine has been putting that work in, which is why it now has a stockpile of Su-24s from which it can launch its new glide bomb. However, there are a couple of caveats to all of this great news for Ukraine. The first is that Medoid's new glide bomb isn't quite ready to go just yet, as mentioned earlier. It's in testing, with Ostrich stating, "We're currently in the testing phase. Initial trials have been conducted from a Su-24 bomber in level flight and have produced positive results, particularly in terms of range and glide behavior of the bomb." There's footage of this testing, which Defense Express shared on its Telegram channel. The 36-second video shows a view from under a Ukrainian Su-24 as it flies through the skies. After a few seconds, a bomb that's been converted using Medoid's new kit is released. Almost instantly, the bomb's wings extend and it glides down toward the ground. Later, the footage switches to a first-person view from the bomb itself as it hurtles toward the ground. The video doesn't show any explosions. What it does show is that Medoid's new kit works. It just needs to go through more testing. And even when that testing is complete, the second caveat comes into play. Medoid needs more money to start producing its new glide bomb at scale. While Medoid has gotten this far by raising its own funds, it now needs a little help from anybody who can provide more. We're looking for every possible opportunity. The cost of one unit is approximately 1.2 million hryvnias, or around $25,000. At this stage, lack of funding is arguably the main factor holding back completion of the project and its transition to serial production. Defense Express reports the Medoid Design Bureau is stating, that money may end up coming from the Ukrainian military, especially if more of Medoid's tests prove to be successful. After all, the glide bomb kit has been built to that military standards. The kit's 37.2 mile range was achieved specifically because Ukraine's Ministry of Defense made that range a minimum requirement for any glide bomb developed domestically. Medoid's kit hits all of the right marks. Now, consider what happens if Medoid secures the funding and begins producing its new glide bomb at scale. Why does that matter? After all, Ukraine already has several types of glide bombs or guided munitions it can deploy against Russia, with most of those bomb kits being superior to Russia's kits. Examples include the US-made Joint Direct Attack Munition, or JDAM, and the AASM Hammer. If Ukraine has those, surely it doesn't need to worry about developing its own glide bomb. On the surface, that would seem to be the case. Take the JDAM for instance. The US Air Force says that this guided missile kit has a tiny circular probable error, or CEP, of around 16.4 feet. That means it's incredibly precise to the point where Ukraine can use it to strike small or well-hidden targets. The JDAM can also be launched from low altitudes, cost around $22,000 to make, and has a range of up to 15 miles. It's compatible with several types of dumb bombs, and it uses a combination of GPS and an inertial navigation system, or INS, for targeting. In almost every aspect other than its range, the JDAM is likely superior to Ukraine's new glide bomb. The problem comes down to stockpiles, or more accurately, the lack thereof. According to former Forbes military writer David Axe, the US hasn't revealed how many JDAMs it sent to Ukraine. It's known that the US builds a lot of these kits, with its developer Boeing having manufactured 550,000 of them as of January 2024. While that's a big number, it seems clear that the US has been drip-feeding its JDAMs to Ukraine, only providing small quantities at any given time. If the US opened the floodgates and started sending tens of thousands of the kits to Ukraine, Russian targets would likely be hit with these versions of the glide bomb far more often. Ukraine has been an innovator in the JDAM space. Back in February, Euromaidan Press reported that it was the first country to use a JDAMer kit to launch a 1,000-pound bomb at Russia. But even that could be a concern. Ukraine's new glide bomb kit is built for bombs weighing that amount. Most JDAMs are for bombs weighing much less, which limits Ukraine's potential firepower. Even if JDAM stockpiles were high in Ukraine, it wouldn't have many of the specific kits it needs for its heavier cab bombs. There's also the relationship between the US and Ukraine to consider here. At the beginning of July, the US halted military aid flowing into Ukraine amidst concerns that it was depleting its domestic missile stockpiles a little too much. That aid has been restored, but this is the second time in 2025 that Ukraine has had to deal with the US pushing the pause button. That's a problem for Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky and his team will naturally be asking themselves if there's a chance that the US could stop the aid flow again. Even if that doesn't happen, Ukraine wants to have as many domestically produced weapons as possible to replace those it might lose from the US. So, there are a couple of clear reasons why Ukraine's glide bomb matters here. When building domestically, Ukraine gets to control its own stockpiles without having to worry about decisions being made by other countries. That's especially important when it comes to the JDAM, as Ukraine won't have to be concerned over potential pauses to military aid in the future. Plus, the country's new glide bomb kit has a longer range and allows the use of heavier dumb bombs than the kits being provided by the United States. As for the hammer, Ukraine has less to worry about on the relationship front than it does with the US. France is steadfast in standing behind Ukraine, as are the rest of the country's military allies. With that weapon, Ukraine also gets its hands on a glide bomb kit that's compatible with bombs weighing up to 2,204 pounds, meaning the JDAM limitation doesn't apply here. An AASM hammer is also guided by a combination of GPS and INS for targeting, with some versions throwing laser guidance and infrared imaging into the mix. Plus, they're accurate. Even the base version of the hammer has a CEP of just about 32 feet, with the laser and infrared guided versions dropping that to about 3.2 feet. Add a range of about 43 miles into the mix, and the result is another kit that at least matches and often exceeds what Ukraine's manufacturers have come up with. But again, the stockpile issue comes into play. France has been ramping up its hammer production. In May, the Kyiv Independent reported that France plans to build 1,200 of the kits, all of which will be sent to Ukraine. That's an impressive number, and France will likely keep up that rate of production for as long as the Ukraine war is raging. However, Ukraine needs more, a lot more. The Kyiv Post says Ukraine would ideally be launching 100 glide bombs at Russia per day if it could. France's hammers only offer enough for about 3 or 4 daily launches. Even when adding the limited number of JDAMs on top, Ukraine's guided bomb stockpiles and its actual needs don't quite add up. The new domestically produced glide bomb could solve those problems, assuming Medoid gets access to the funding it needs to produce its $25,000 kit in large enough volumes. So, building its own glide bombs could solve Ukraine's stockpile and control challenges. But there's another reason why Medoid's new kit is so important. It allows Ukraine to fight fire with fire using a bomb that's more accurate than its Russian counterpart. Mentioned earlier in the video was a return to the subject of Russia's glide bombs and what they are. The BBC provided the important details in a May 2024 article, in which it explained that glide bomb kits are essentially wings that can be strapped to a Russian dumb bomb, allowing it to glide toward its target. It also revealed that these wing kits have some form of basic satellite navigation, and that they cost Russia between $20,000 and $30,000 each to build. Ukraine's new kit falls right within that price range, suggesting that Medoid has done a good job of emulating the Russians' work. The BBC also says that Russia most commonly attaches these kits to Fab 1500 bombs, which weigh 3,300 pounds and can deliver the equivalent of more than around 100 times the explosive force of a 152mm artillery round. Those bombs are terrifying on their own. With its glide kits, Russia also made them viable weapons after it failed to achieve superiority over Ukraine's airspace. And boy, has Russia been utilizing its glide bomb advantage over the last couple of years. In January, Reuters reported that Russia had dropped more than 51,000 glide bombs on Ukraine since Putin launched his invasion. Russia didn't seem to start using them in earnest until late 2023, meaning the 51,000 number actually covers a little more than 1 year of warfare. Russia could have been launching anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 of these bombs at Ukraine per month during that time, and Putin's forces have devastated the country's cities as a result. That's another important point. Putin isn't using his glide bombs to strike legitimate Ukrainian military targets, at least not all of the time. As Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty revealed in April 2025, several Ukrainian cities have become shells of their former selves thanks to Russia's glide bomb strategy. Among them is Chasiv Yar, which used to be home to more than 10,000 people before Putin set its sights on it. Toretsk, Bakhmut, Vovchansk, Marinka have also practically become ghost towns thanks to Russia's constant glide bomb raids. All that's left in these cities are the burnt-out husks of buildings. The bombs have been so effective for Putin that the Center for European Policy Analysis, or CEPA, declared them as Russian wonder weapons. CEPA points out that Russia's use of Soviet-era bombs and simple glide kits has allowed it to do far more damage with glide bombs than it's managed with more advanced missiles. Volume multiplied by OK accuracy means a lot of damage done to Ukraine. With its new domestically produced glide bombs, Ukraine aims to give Russia a taste of its own medicine. That doesn't mean that Ukraine will be using the bombs to attack Russian cities. It couldn't do much damage beyond the border regions even if it wanted to, given that Russia has pushed a decent way into Ukraine. But what it can do is use its new glide bombs to devastate Russian forces behind the stretching front line of the Ukraine war, taking out armor, command headquarters, and entire units of soldiers in explosive revenge for everything Russia has done to Ukraine with its glide bombs. If Ukraine can get this right, its new glide bombs could be a massive pressure reliever. Rather than fighting against the human waves of soldiers Putin is sending against its defensive positions daily, it could cut those waves off at the source by bombing behind them to take out their command post and supporting units. Pressure is relieved. Openings for counterattacks are created, and with its new glide bombs, Ukraine can force down Putin's throat the very weapon Russia's leader has used to devastating effect during his invasion. And Ukraine isn't just delving back into its past to turn its stockpiles of Soviet-era bombs into lethal weapons thanks to its new glide kits. It's also innovating on the artificial intelligence front with a new weapon that spells doom for Russia's air force. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show if you want more videos covering Ukraine's latest weapons and innovations.